All right, welcome to my capstone presentation. My name is Tori McDaniel. I'm a JSU Instructional Leadership student, and I've chosen two projects that we've done at school. I've done the action plan in JSU 510, IL 510, and I also did a project in JSU IL 564, and that's the two projects I want to work with today. The first one is going to be my action plan that we've done and that we've implemented, and it is the addition of the Read 180 program for the special ed students at Cedar Bluff. The problem statement, or the problem we were facing at Cedar Bluff, was we are a focused school. Now, the focused school came because there's a significant gap between achievement on standardized test scores between our special ed population and our general ed population. And that's not necessarily saying that our special ed population are making so much poorly on tests than all the other students in Alabama that are special ed, but at our school we had a significant gap because our regular ed students were, for a couple of years, knocking it out of the park and having no one fail or be under meeting expectations, and that created the significant gap, which created us being a focused school at Cedar Bluff. The hypothesis statement that I had was the addition of the Read 180 intervention program will help improve student scores on standardized tests for the middle grade students with learning disabilities. And I only wanted to start with the middle grade students first, and I only wanted to start with students with the learning disabilities first, because there were about, out of the 6th grade and 7th grade that were there currently, there were 15 students, and that would give us a significant piece of data. And then if that was successful, we could expand what we were doing. A couple of definitions I want to go over first before we start is the Scantron test. When I'm talking about the Scantron test, it is the current standardized test that we are using now in the state of Alabama. It did away with the ACT Aspire, and Scantron is what we're using currently. Scantron will actually go away at the end of this year, and we will go to a different test. But Scantron, for the last 2 years, we would have a pre-test and a post-test each year. Scholastic Reading Inventory, and this is a part of Read 180. And when you hear me say this, this is the test that is given to every student at the beginning of Read 180. This test gives a true Lexile reading score, which that tells you kind of what grade level the student's on based off their reading comprehension. Not only are they reading for fluency, but are they comprehending what they're reading, or are they able to make inferences from what they've read. And Lexile score, like I said, is a true indication of comprehension and grade level. ACT Aspire test was the test that was used before we went to Scantron. Well, what's the research say? Vocabulary is a must in order to gather prior knowledge. So, what we know is students, when they have prior knowledge, they tend to want to read more, they tend to be more engaged. You have to activate that prior knowledge, though, before any kind of learning can take place. So for students just reading and they don't understand what they're reading, they're not going to be engaged, they're not going to be focused, comprehension cannot take place. There is a direct correlation between reading achievement and dropouts, meaning by as early as the 5th grade, if a student cannot read on grade level, they are 3 times more likely to drop out of school than their peers. The older you are, the more you struggle to learn. So if we're talking about this, like if a student was a 7th grade student, a 6th grade student, if they haven't learned to read with comprehension and read with fluency, by the time they're in 3rd grade, it becomes harder to learn to read. So even if they're trying harder and working harder, it is just harder to learn how to read, because usually all that learning takes place, anywhere from pre-K to 3rd grade. Reluctant and resistant readers need to have meaningful and purposeful reading. And that is why I've chosen Read 180, because it is very focused. It has different elements to it, different components to it, which really breaks down and engages the reader, the active reader. There's a fluency level, there's a comprehension level, there's a written level. So there's all these levels to it, and the students were able to work independent by themselves in the technology portion, and is also able to do independent reading, but they're also able to get help from the teacher in small group reading. The components of the Read 180, there's independent reading, there's a fluency reading, technology portion, and then there's small group instruction. The action plan was to compare reading scores after Read 180 implementation. This is going to consist of our students with disabilities. We're going to implement Read 180, and we were going to be able to compare at least one set of data from Scantron, because in 2017-18 we have a pre and post test, and in 2018 we've already been able to take a pre-test. So we were able to compare that data, and we were also able to compare STAR test data from 4 times. We actually started in July. We did July, August, and September, so we have STAR data from that. And all the students participating in this study are below grade level. So I wanted to start small, aim small, and just focus on those students that were below grade level at first, and then see where we could go. Some of the limitations, naturally, anytime you change tests, ACT Aspire to Scantron doesn't measure the same thing. Scantron, we were able to at least pick up vocabulary, which is a major component of the Scantron, and we were able to pick up comprehension, but does that correlate with the ACT Aspire? And those were the things we were trying to pull to make it correlate as much as possible. Scantron did allow for a pre and post test, so we were able to at least have 4 things of data and what we've seen, and then with using STAR tests and just daily work, we were able to build off that. Since we were a focus school, we got focus money. We weighed the cost of the program. We wanted to start small, but we were able to keep building on it. We got about 30 seats, which amount to about $1,000 a seat. The schedule of activities, and this changed a little bit. We're always collecting data as a professional standards commission. We're always collecting data. With that data, we were able to analyze and realize that students were failing reading tests, but they also were failing the math test. So what did we need to do, and what was it combined that was happening was students that were failing reading almost failed the math. And the math on the ACT Aspire had a huge reading component to it. Were you able to read problems? Were you able to comprehend what you were reading and go forward? We actually started in July. We brought a group of our special ed kids in July. Those 15 kids, we had Focus Tiger School money, and we brought those kids in, and we got to start Read 180 in July, and we went from there, July, August, September, before the post test. And we are able to collect data weekly, so we've had several things of data just in the 2 months that we've started as the school started back. What's the data say? Well, the data clearly shows that all STAR tests went up. I wouldn't say dramatically, but we all went up at least a grade level. Some went up 2 grade levels after implementing Read 180. This was for our students that are currently in the 7th grade and our students that are currently in the 8th grade. All their data has went up. So from the time July they took it to August to September, their grade and their vocabulary comprehension and their grade equivalency has went up. Scantron, we're only able to take one thing of data from the Scantron so far, but it showed that all the data has shown that vocabulary has increased and their grade equivalence has increased from the time they took the pre-test in 2017 all the way till right now, the pre-test in 2018. So it does show it's working, and what I've realized is that the lower they make on the SRI test, which is Scholastic Reading Inventory, then the lower they went up. But if they made higher, say 600 or above, they actually show more of a growth increase. So if students are within 2 to 3 grade reading levels, they even increase even further than they do if they're like several grade levels behind. Basically, the Lexile scores on the Scantron post stayed the same or increased on all levels of the students that did it. Vocabulary increased for each student on the Scantron test. There's a direct link between the SRI score test and the increase in Scantron, and that's what I was trying to say. The higher they made on their SRI test, the more they went up on their grade level and their vocabulary knowledge. We were able to increase teacher training through this because it's proven that it is working. The kids are loving it, and we were also able to pull more students in and train more students, and now we have 30 students in the READ 180 program. And some of the standards addressed here, I was able to collaborate with teachers, I was able to research a program, I was able to collect much data. I also was able to share my goals with my principal and my school, and we want to take this district-wide. So we still have, a couple more weeks and a few more tests to look at, but we're looking at taking this district-wide. My second project I did was teachers' unethical behavior. What I wanted to focus on was cheating, social media, and I also wanted to focus on sexual misconduct of teachers. Why this was important to me was simply because this is the quickest thing that can get teachers fired. And me as an administrator, I want to know what's going on in my building, and I want teachers to know what can and can not happen to them as teachers and professionals. The first thing is just cheating. Blatant cheating from, just giving kids grades to cheating on standardized tests to erasing marks from teachers, and all those things are happening. One of the major things we found that was happening is teachers were getting bonuses the higher that their students made. So this would probably make a professional want to do that, and it would be very easy for teachers to go in and erase marks on standardized tests. A couple of major things we found was in Washington, D.C., that they were implementing a system of linking test scores to bonuses, which was causing teachers, of course, to teach the test, to maybe act unethically, erase wrong marks and put the right answers in there. What the investigation did show, though, maybe little cheating occurred, but did leave officials wanting more. The Texas cheating scandal, though, however, it showed one major thing that I was looking at. Underachieving schools were more likely to have participated in untrustworthy activity. And that just means that the lower your school was, the more the teachers were not teaching and just trying to get by. So was any learning going on? One of the major silver linings was that if students that had no care in the world about their grades, when teachers started doing this, they kind of started caring about their grades more. So that was the give or take. But of course, that was a major scandal. Social media is one of the major problems that teachers will face in their time. The major thing from this project that I learned is teachers do not have the absolute First Amendment rights that is allotted to all American citizens. It is very limited in a professional setting. It cannot interfere with instruction, and that's the major thing. So, is it legal to have a Facebook page? Yes. Is it legal for a teacher to have a Facebook page and cause a stir in the community or a stir in the school which limits instruction? No, it is not legal. The courts have proved this. See Ashley Payne, she went to Europe and she just had a glass of wine on her trip, and she posted it on Facebook. Of course, she was fired. Carly Crunkbear, she was posting pictures, provocative pictures. She was drinking, she was smoking, all in her free time, but she was fired. She could not do that in the community. Asked for her job. Now the last one, Mindy Jensen, she was a bodybuilder, a professional bodybuilder, and she was initially fired, but she was brought back because it was shown that her bikini was a part of her actual uniform. But although it did cause a stir, it was on the news, and it's just suggested that you just cannot do that. And it all depends on, the community that you live in. I would tell teachers that, and one thing I've learned, if you lived in a laid-back community, you probably can get away with a little more than if you live in the Bible Belt. One of the disturbing facts here for sexual misconduct is 9.3% of teachers do not consider making sexual provocative remarks to students as a serious ethical violation. And that's entirely too much. That actually should be 0%. There have been shown that there's 10% of students that have been violated through sexual misconduct from their teachers. See Alexandra Vera, she actually had a boyfriend who was 14, 13 years old, and the parents knew about it, but that did not matter. She was still fired from her job, and she was sentenced to jail. It's just wrong, and what she was thinking is, since the parents knew that it would be okay, it does not matter if the parents knew. See, Timothy Mall, he was arrested for offering extra credit to a student for sexual favors. Of course, he was fired. And see, Stevie Glasspool, who had a Facebook page, and she was soliciting sex from her students and former students through her Facebook page. All these teachers were fired. All these teachers were in violation of the ethics. Title IX, and one of the major things right here to know is, teachers, if you know something is going on and you do not report, then you are liable under Title IX. You must report. If you see something, you must say something. It is mandatory. You also need to know, teachers, that it is minimum risk if you do your job. If you're reporting and doing your job, you're at minimum risk. One of the major things we learned in this class was the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics, and this is the first thing that I would do as an administrator. I would go over this, not just send it to my teachers and faculty. I would go over this in the faculty meeting on the first day of school. And just some of the things that I've learned right here is just able to act as a moral compass, learn more about the ethics, First Amendment right for teachers, and that was what I was able to do. So I appreciate you listening to my capstone presentation.